Hello and welcome to the Get Online podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Keogh, and today I'm so excited to be joined by my friend, Aarti Parmar. Aarti works with businesses to build authentic and meaningful brands that help them achieve their goals through an empowering and collaborative process of brand strategy, coaching, and brand design. It's pretty different from some other concepts of brand building because she's actually combined her branding expertise with personal performance coaching, which is a really unusual thing to do and offers her a fantastic USP. She allows her clients to have a much more mindful and intentional approach when it comes to recognizing what it means to identify, take ownership, and lead with their brand purpose, values, and vision when it comes to marketing and branding, making a more informed strategic decision for their growth. She's pretty impressive. She's been selected as the F Entrepreneur of I Also campaign for 2020. She's been a finalist in the Best Business Woman Awards for customer service, and she's been featured in both Forbes and Marie Claire. So I'm very, very excited to welcome to the show today, Aarti Parmar. Hello, Aarti, and welcome to today's show.
Hello, hello.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really, really excited to speak to you all about branding. You and I have had the pleasure of meeting at lots of different networking events up until the pandemic. And then even since those lockdown periods in the UK, we have had the pleasure of getting on calls together and chit-chatting all about branding. And you always offer such amazing insights and share lots of information about amazing brands that are doing awesome things with branding. So I'm really, really pleased to have you here today to talk us through the benefits of using your brand to get attention of your audience. I actually wanted to start off by asking you a question around being purpose-led, because there's a huge shift I found, particularly in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, towards businesses being really purpose-led. Is that something that you have been noticing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, thank you, Stacey, for having me on. And I always love our chats when we are networking and stuff. So yes, coming back to the question, definitely seeing more and more businesses being more aware about being purpose-led. And for me, I absolutely have loved seeing business owners, big, small, just having that more awareness and taking more action on that.
Yeah, I mean, where does it come from, do you think? Is it this desire to be more engaged with a business, that we expect more from them nowadays? Like, where does that come from, do you think, from a consumer's perspective?
From a consumer's perspective, I think people want to feel more cared for. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to know that brands are taking them into consideration. And I think brands now more and more are realizing that they can't just be everything to everyone. They have to take a much more intentional approach, and an approach that means having more of a connection with their relevant target audience.
I can see that, because I suppose it's all about, now that I didn't say now that we're a saturated market. Obviously, many industries have been saturated for extended periods of time. And I guess it is a way a little bit for brands to be able to cut through the noise and show, I guess, more of their USPs when they've got something that they're really, really focused on that demonstrates the purpose and what they're trying to achieve beyond revenue, I suppose, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's go back a step. And actually, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, because it's pretty interesting. You've done quite a few different things. You've worked all over the world, which is actually really exciting. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, sure. Thank you for allowing me to just share that. So yeah, I mean, at uni, I did do visual communication design, and I specialized in graphic design. When I was 22, I always had this ambition. I want to travel and work abroad. So 3 weeks before, I got an opportunity to go out to Singapore. So, I said to my parents, I'm going to, go for about 6 months to a year and, see how it goes, and I'll be back, kind of thing. So they were like, yeah, cool, go. So I went over to Singapore, worked there for a short while, and then I got sent to Malaysia and worked with an advertising agency over there. And through that agency, I met some local business partners, and they were like, look, why don't we start a one-stop shop? You do graphic design, this guy does color separation, and this guy does printing. And I was like, at that point, I was 24 now. And I kind of said to them, look, I've got zero experience of running a business, and I'm still quite green in doing, graphic design. Why would I start a business kind of thing? And they were like, look, there's dime a dozen graphic designers out there. If it doesn't work for you, we'll get somebody else in. And that was it, sort of thing. And I was like, oh, okay. When something shifts in your mind, then you're like, oh, okay, I've really actually got nothing to lose here.
Yeah.
So I thought, yeah, and I was always quite sort of like, if I grab an opportunity, that kind of thing. So I thought, right, okay, give this a go. And I did. And we very quickly went into doing work for public listed property developers, to department stores, to working with the F&B sector, to jewelry, to fine dining, you name the sector, we probably touched it at some point or another. But also what happened very quickly was that I ended up growing a team, which moved me from graphic design now to then business development, doing networking, marketing, brand communications, and, being the account manager for some of these big brands that we were also working for. So, that's probably where the taste of running a business started from. Basically, in short, I ended up being there for 10 years, although, I kind of said initially I'll be there for 6 months to a year. But it's these things, when you don't realize time just passes and new opportunities are coming, and, you're just loving life. I was traveling and all of that kind of thing as well, meeting some amazing people from around the world, different expats. I was meeting wonderful local people, and just all sorts of different mindsets, from CEOs of companies to, startup businesses. So it was a real kind of good exposure for me whilst I was there.
So cool. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I totally resonate. Obviously, I am originally from New Zealand and traveled to the UK with the plan at the time was to be here for 18 months to work and do a little bit more travel and then return home. And then here we are 14 years later. So started a business, bought property here. I completely relate. Easily done, my friend. That's so cool. So then obviously once you did return to the UK, what happened then? So how did you get from that point to then starting your own sort of branding consultancy?
So when I returned, my father had a TV audio business. It was a Bang & Olufsen TV audio shop in Harpenden. So when I returned, I was just like, right, actually, I've got zero contacts, no network, nobody knows me in the business world. So my father had this shop that he'd been running for like over 30 years. And I thought it would be a great stepping stone to kind of actually start building my own contact base and network. And also, he wasn't like on social media and stuff. It was all very sort of, face-to-face business,
old school.
Referral, very old school,
Handshake,
that kind of thing. So, I was kind of took it upon myself to take on the marketing stroke brand communications kind of role. Because although, Bang & Olufsen is a global brand, but you're pretty much an independent, retailer in that sense. So, you're doing your own marketing and stuff like that.
Of course, yeah.
So that was great. What I did first and foremost, so whilst I was actually in Malaysia, I had my first taste of networking. And it was actually with BNI. I'm sure some of your listeners will.
Yeah, of course.
But I absolutely loved what I learned around networking. So, I just applied that to when I came back to UK, and I was just like networking all the time, like to a point where my sister was like, are you actually doing anything, at Dad's shop? Are you just meeting people for coffee? And I was like, I'm building relationships. This is really important, that kind of thing. And, enough, it was great. I held all sorts of different events and whatever and stuff whilst I was at the shop, and it collaborated with people, it was helping with the footfall and all of that kind of thing. But what also happened as buying trends were changing, we then changed into a multiple brand TV audio shop. So I completely rebranded the shop. Basically, a year later, we got approached by a bigger TV audio company who wanted to expand into Harpenden. So great exit strategy, because I didn't want to take over a TV audio shop, and, my dad was kind of ready to retire at that point. So now this left me at a bit of a crossroad of like, do I go and work with an agency, which was something that I always wanted to do in London, or start my own business? And actually, initially, I went out, applying for jobs and having interviews with creative agencies. And basically, in short, I was told, like, look, you've got no London agency experience, so, we can't give you a job. And I heard that multiple times, and I was like, huh? I don't understand.
That's
I've been
crazy, isn't it?
These, global brands in Malaysia, running an agency. So, I know the principle, I've got the fundamentals. It's just I've not done it in London, kind of thing. So, I kept getting rejected. Or I'll get people saying, you've done all of this, on your CV. Why are you not starting your own business? So in the background, I mean, I was already doing a bit of design and branding work for clients, a bit of freelance stuff and things like that. So it was one particular interview, and basically she started to really pigeonhole me into a role. And the more and more she was talking, the more and more in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do that day in, day out, and for months and months and months, kind of thing. And I just made a decision. I came away from that interview and I was like, right, that's it. I am just going to start my own business.
You're in.
And that's that. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's what I did. I, shifted my energy, got really focused on my own business. And that whole thing, when you shift that energy and when you get super focused on something, the ball really does start rolling there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. So I love it.
Yeah.
It's so funny, isn't it? I've heard stories like this before where it's like you're almost like overqualified to do this and you're underqualified to do that. And it's a little bit frustrating. I don't think that's an unusual story. And fortunately for us and hopefully all of our listeners that will soon become very aware of everything that you're doing, it's been a complete pleasure because we get to see absolutely everything that you're doing and everything that you're teaching. And that's possibly something we would not have seen had you gone and actually worked with an agency. So I'm excited about that, right?
Yeah, I'm a massive believer. Everything, life does, everything does happen for a reason.
Happens for a reason. Yeah. Yes, 100%. Yeah, sometimes it's not super easy to see it at the time, but absolutely. I'd love to talk to you about, I want to get into some of these principles and some of the branding work that you do and what sort of businesses should be focusing on with regards to their brands if they haven't looked at it before. But it might be really nice to start with things that go wrong. I mean, I do love speaking about mistakes and problems and all these sorts of things. Yeah. Is there anything that comes to mind for you that you see brands do and you just think, oh God, what are you doing? Or are there any brands that you can think of that have made some really horrific mistakes and things that we should maybe be looking to avoid?
Yeah, some of the sort of branding mistakes that I see is that whole thing of, just jumping in 2 feet first. And I see it all the time where businesses are like, right, I'm just going to go and quickly get a logo done. I'm going to go and get my website done. And then I'm going to go and do all my marketing and stuff like that. And they've actually not taken the time to even define who they are as a brand or understand why they are actually in business or why they want to, do what it is that they want to do, in terms of providing that service or product and haven't really got to that why in that sense. And they've rushed into this, I've got my logo and I've got this website, and they feel then after, it could be 6 months, a year, or 2 years, they feel like they've just kind of hit a roadblock. And because these are the kind of clients that will come to me and they're like, I feel really like demotivated, I feel lost, I feel like all over the place, I don't even know really what I stand for. And that for me is because that they haven't actually looked into who are they as a brand, how do they want to be seen, what is it that they actually really want to be known for, so they can strategically position themselves.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think I know those brands. That are just like, let's get the logo and let's get the website done. And then we'll just, we'll go into delivering what it is that we do. And we'll almost kind of look at the brand later. And to a certain extent, I can understand it because I think, if you're a really, really small business, budget is a thing, right? It's like, I don't really have the time to be thinking and investing the resources in developing a brand, which is very different from, let's say, a startup that has, bases their startup model on on being funded, right? So I find, for example, clients that we work with who have received funding or have some kind of investment, brand is the first thing they go to, because they do understand the importance of positioning, and they do understand the importance of getting clarity around their message and actually the direction in which they're trying to go. But then the flip side is those other businesses that I suppose perhaps they're businesses that have almost been someone's hobby, that have kind of turned into a business, or perhaps they've been, like you and I, we both started out as freelancers that kind of turned into a business. And so we maybe, before we knew it, we almost had a business and didn't know it. Does that resonate? Is that sort of the experiences you were finding with some of these clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, in fact, I just had a call the other day and the lady was like, I'm a solo hobbyist. And I was like, oh, I like that. I was like, okay, now I can use this in my content. Are you a solo hobbyist?
Yeah, absolutely. What point would you recommend that somebody is really looking at this? Is it right at 0.1, like right at the go, or is this something that people should go out to market for a little bit before they come back and decide what to do with their brands? Like, when do we know that we need to be looking at this?
I think it's, a bit of doing it. There is an element of doing a bit of your own sort of, research and development and stuff, because, anybody that starts a business, they're not just, or thinking about starting a business. It's not like, right, I've got the idea today, tomorrow I need my brand, I need to define the brand. First, usually the case, when I've had startups even approach me, they've already thought quite a lot about their product or service, and they've done some research and stuff like that. So I would say, yes, do that research. Ask, who you think that relevant target audience is. And that might be some people that are amongst your friends and family anyway. Run the idea past them, get some feedback, get some thoughts around it. And then you can, sort of start putting that into, right, actually, so if that is what I'm offering, because, that's what a business is, isn't it? They're going to offer a product or service. What is that? And is it going to work? And that kind of thing. Then it's about, right, okay, how do I now package this into a brand that's going to be appealing to who I want to serve? So I guess it's first doing that bit of research.
So it's sort of, it's almost like they need that proven concept, like this is a business and this is actually going to work. And now that we know that, then actually we need to dig a little bit deeper and figure out how we're going to portray what we do. So can you maybe explain to our listeners what is a brand? Because I think sometimes a lot of people will just think, oh, it's my logo.
Yes, I hear that all the time, and I always say,
thought that might make you laugh.
yeah. I've got my own little saying now. I say, like, a brand is what gives a logo meaning. It's not a logo that gives a brand meaning.
Right, like that. Really good.
Yeah. So when I'm delivering my workshops, and I'll pull up a page of some famous brands that we all know and like, and all of that kind of thing, and I'll say to them, put your hands up if you think these brands are successful because of their logo. And some of them will actually put their hands up, and I'm like, look, actually, if you had no idea what this brand was and you only saw their logo, it would be meaningless to you. So always remember, it's a brand that gives a logo meaning, not a logo that gives a brand meaning.
Yeah, amazing. So what kind of things make this up? Are we talking, value proposition, mission? Where do we begin?
Yeah. So in terms of, what is a brand and what it's actually, compiled of, in that sense, I always say that a brand is a created perception. And that perception comes from a variety of different things that a brand does and what it stands for. In terms of what it stands for and who it is, that is derived from your, brand purpose, your values, your vision, those growth goals. What is that for a business? And all of the other attributes that make a brand, like your brand personality, understanding the positioning and the perception. Perception's a really key thing, in terms of, it's good to understand what is it that you want to be known for? So, there's that famous saying, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. To me, it's about actually what you need to do is make them say the things you want them to say about you. So that comes from, and that's why I say a brand is a created perception. So what perceptions do you want to create in people's minds about you that's going to form those beliefs that will then allow them to talk about you in the way that you would like them to talk about you? So if you, for example, say, I want to be seen as the digital expert that does all these, amazing things and creates results and stuff, then, what is it that you are actually doing and making, happen to be that? So that, comes back to that point of, a brand is a created perception. So taking that time to really define and understand your brand first and foremost will help to then work that into your brand identity, which is the logo and the colors, fonts, messaging, and all of that side of it, which will then go into the website and marketing and digital and all the other wonderful channels and platforms that we have.
Yeah, that we can portray them on.
Yeah.
And so to give this some context, who does this well? What sort of brands would we know, public brands that we would recognize that do this really well, in your opinion?
Yeah. It's one of my favorite brands, actually. It's Nike. They really embody what it is that they stand for. And it is around that inspire and innovate. And then there is the whole thing to unite the world through sport to create a healthy planet, active communities, and equal playing field. You see in that, they're not talking about we sell trainers and we sell apparel. It's how that is actually integrated and embodied into all of who they are and all of their campaigns and all of their marketing. So that's where, a brand really can actually differentiate itself from others when they actually stand for something.
Yeah, I mean, their branding is amazing. And I think you get that from when if you follow them, for example, on any of their social media channels, you get this real feeling of empowerment and diversity and inclusivity and all of those things that they talk about. And it's not that they're saying them. They're not saying, oh, look how diverse we are. Look at how empowering we are. It's just something about the feeling that you get from the imagery that you see and from the language that they're using that gives you that feeling of power, right?
Oh, it's come to me now. That's it. The mission is around, to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. If you have a body, you are an athlete. I absolutely love that. And
yeah, that gave me chills, actually, when you just said that.
That's the thing, isn't it? That bring inspiration and innovation. When you go onto their social, when you look at their campaigns and stuff like that, you're like, oh yeah, that has that in their messaging. It's there.
Yeah, they're talking about it. They talk about community, and you can see that, as I say, they're talking about empowerment and diversity. You can see that in everything they do. They're talking about sort of how they take big leaps, big risks, which, plays into some of the language that they're using. They talk about expanding human potential, all of that kind of stuff, which it gives you a feeling really of who they are, right?
Yeah.
They also have a really great sustainability part of it too. And I know both you and I are obviously quite obsessed with running social impact. And so I always notice this about brands. And I think I think I've seen a tagline or something about how they're sort of protecting the future of sport. And I guess they're looking at how they're sourcing the materials they use in all of their clothing. And is that done in this, can't get my words out, in a sustainable way, and sort of helping to track that, what do you call it, a pipeline in terms of how they're sourcing those materials. And I think that's becoming more and more important, isn't it, for businesses?
Yeah, definitely. I think more brands are definitely going down that route, aren't they? And being more aware of where they are sourcing and bringing that into their communications as well, because as consumers, we want to help the environment and create a bit more of a global impact. So by brands taking the initiative to do that shows that, again, they care.
I think they do a really good job of it. I could probably talk about them for ages, because they do a whole thing on female empowerment too, don't they, around empowering girls and female athletes and things like that, which It definitely gets my attention. I definitely buy their products. So something is working for sure.
Yeah, put it this way, since the age of, I don't know, probably about 7 or 8, I don't know what it is. I can't get myself to buy any other trainers, and it's got to be Nike.
Yeah, I'm the same. Isn't that strange?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
probably not so strange. I guess
I've
it's
tried
just,
other, to go and buy other sport trainers, and I just can't get myself to do it.
yeah, it's interesting. I'm the same with any of my gym gear. Like I'm like,
Mhm.
it has to come from there. They're
Yeah.
they're the best. I have looked at a few other brands, but it's never quite can never quite get past it. Even their store experience is amazing,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Oxford Street in London.
I
Yeah,
was just looking at the
absolutely.
phone in there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What else? Any other brands that you love and you think just do a really great job of cutting through and communicating their brand?
Yeah, I think on another completely different sort of thing, I really liked the way Dove did this. I mean, they did this quite some time ago, but for them, it was about helping women reconsider and redefine what beauty is. I
Mm,
don't know if you remember those ads that came out. They just started using a whole
real women.
yes, exactly. And short, big, long, tall, with colors. And I was just like, I'm loving this different ages. And I was like, that's brilliant. They
Mm,
disrupted a market in that sense, I would say, in people's mindsets about, it doesn't have to be this way and it's okay. And, they're selling soaps. But I
yeah.
love the way that they've used their brand to project a message out there.
There's a big vision, isn't there?
Change. Yeah,
Mm, I
absolutely.
love that campaign. I did talk about it actually was it last week's episode when I talked about disruptive marketing
Wow.
because yeah, exactly. I think was it 2005 or something when it came out, when at the time, now I guess it's a little bit more normalized and we're seeing a lot of brands use, normal looking people
Yeah.
in their marketing, but that really was quite unique at the time. It wasn't, nobody else was doing it. It was quite shocking actually in some ways, which seems crazy to say right now, but it
Yeah.
was.
Even now, when you go onto their social and stuff like that, they've just got lovely messages, and it's carried through. And that for me is, that's when a brand purpose has been integrated into the whole sort of business model, into the marketing, into the brand culture, and all of that as well.
Yeah. Well, I've seen actually on their vision statement reads like this. So it says, we want women and girls of all ages to see beauty as a source of confidence, not anxiety.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's good, right? And it
Mm.
says, so we're on a mission to help the next generation of women develop a positive relationship with the way they look, helping them raise their self-esteem and realize their full potential. Yes. It's crazy when you just made the statement to say they're selling soap. Like it's true. And yet they give you there's such a bigger vision behind what they're trying to achieve,
Yeah,
which helps you to connect to that brand, right? And it resonates with you.
definitely, definitely. And I
I
believe
love it.
that can be done for, from the big brands to small brands, the one-man brands as well.
Well, yeah, that's what we're here to talk about today. So talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, what sort of process, for example, would you take a client through? Because you do brand discovery sessions, right? Like what are you looking
Yeah,
for? What are you helping people to achieve?
absolutely. So just so you're aware of, I kind of didn't say this earlier, but so when I did start my business, I also accidentally came across coaching. And I was just like, when I came across this concept of coaching, I was like, oh my God, I need this in my life, for myself, for my business, and just the ability of, what coaching does and how
Mm,
you can facilitate a conversation to really draw something out, the potential out of, a person or a business in that sense. So, marrying the two together for me was like, right, this has to come hand in hand, because for me, it's very much about helping my clients to take real ownership of their brand and really align with, why it is that they are doing what they are doing. And this is what happens in that brand discovery session. So we'll dig deeper into that why, what are the brand values, but not just, what's your brand values. It's about, what do those values actually mean to you? How are they going to show up in your business? Because these are not just words, these are words that you are going to be living, breathing, walking, talking. Not only you, your whole team are going to be doing this, but you need to give it an identity, so then it can be integrated and embodied throughout everything that everyone does in your business.
yeah.
So, that has to be unpacked and unraveled. So that's something that I do in the discovery session, along with, again, looking at the vision for the business, because nobody kind of sets up to just say, right, I'm going to last for the next 6 months. It's not that, is it? People are like, right, actually, where do I want to take this? And helping them to really sort of identify some of these things that they could be achieving and milestones. So really getting them thinking about this and seeing how is this going to be helping them move forward. So I call it, part of their growth goals over periods of time. What are they wanting to achieve? And, growth for every individual means different things. I've done hundreds of discovery sessions, and there's some things will come up that as, sort of same, similar, but then, everyone has different growth goals, and those growth goals could be measured in impact. Yes, obviously turnover and stuff like that, and building a team and all of that kind of thing. So really, really getting clear on defining what that brand is, and then coming back into the other attributes, like I said, around the brand perception, positioning, target audience, tone of voice, and all of those kind of things. So they go away, or, during the session, it's like unpacking, exploring, unraveling all of this stuff. And by the end of it, we come bringing it back together with the things that, makes them actually say, yes, oh my gosh, this is what I want to be known for. This is how I want to be seen. And I can see where I can see a bigger vision here as well. But I know now what I need to work on first to get to those other growth goals in that sense. But one of the key things is, and I love doing, is helping them to connect with their own brand purpose. Yeah.
Is there anything that holds people back? Like, do people get really stuck with this and just not know where to go with it? Or how do you, is this sort of an exercise or something you might take people through? Or
yeah, it is. And this is where my coaching hat comes in, actually. So, there is, it is very much sort of open-ended questions, but then I'm also sharing with them examples of other brands and their purpose and how they've integrated it into their business model and stuff like that. So it's, it starts opening their mind in that sense. But it comes back down to asking those kind of powerful questions that they've never asked themselves. And to be honest, sometimes, Stacey, I've had people actually get emotional and cry in a discovery session, because it's tears of joy, it's tears of like also identifying, their own strengths and where they've come from, listening more about their journey. Because a lot of the time people end up going into a business because it's connected to something, and they feel like, actually, I can make this better, or I can improve it and help, my target audience to in some way improve or transform or change or impact in some ways or another. I always say, a business it's a vehicle to take people from A to B.
And same for your customers too. I guess that's the whole point, right? It's like, it's not just buying the soap from Dove. It's like you're taking them on this journey of empowerment and feeling confident, for example. So
yeah.
That's what you're looking to build into the business.
It's amazing. And that's why it's important for me to help them to really take that ownership, because I can't tell them that, you have to do this, because if it doesn't resonate with their values and their
they won't do it.
They won't do it. They'll say yes. and then it's like, it won't be done, because that's not what's driving them, so it's important to get to the bottom of really actually what's driving you, because then you can grow out your business with that purpose integrated through everything that they do.
So how do you think, because I've actually gone through this exercise, a couple of years back, actually, with my team. And at the time, I obviously got my team really involved in it. And when we were defining our core values, I got them really involved. And is the language that we're using, does that make sense? And is that what they would use? And got them quite involved in that process. And then we sort of benchmark our quarterly assessments that we do with the team, are benchmarked against our values, like how much have they lived our values. So they're sort of, I guess in some ways I'm probably pressurizing them to think about it all the time. Yeah. But are there any tips or pieces of advice that you would offer in terms of getting that integrated? Because I guess one of my concerns, for example, is that when you scale, how do you maintain that? And how do you make sure that those core values or that big vision doesn't get lost or watered down as you become a bigger business?
Yeah. I mean, so for the bigger businesses, I know there are specialists that work with, company culture, brand culture, and in that sense. So if you're at that size and you can hire that person in to look into that, then I would definitely recommend that, because, it's not just right, we've got these values and that's it,
slap them on the wall, everybody look at them,
put them on mugs and stuff. It's exactly probably what you're doing in that sense, checking in on that and just asking
I think
making them consciously aware that, are we doing this? Have our actions got these values across? Does our social media communications, if our value is, I don't know, knowledgeable or something along those kind of lines, or empowering, how, are we being empowering in each and every, in our, not each and every one, but, in our posts? What kind of words are we using? So checking in that sense it's a great way to stay on top of it.
Yeah, and I think, like, as I've just said that, I think obviously don't pressure my team to live our core values, hopefully, but I suppose when I think back, actually, the first, probably even year was a bit awkward. Like, it was almost like it felt a bit cheesy sometimes talking about it all the time. And we used to try to end all of our team calls with, like, giving a shout out to someone who's done specifically, lives our core value in some way. And it felt a little bit I don't want to say fake, but almost like awkward is probably a better word. And actually, probably after the first, 9 to 12 months, then it actually did become quite inbred in the business. And I think that's it. It's like you sort of have to keep at it, don't you? And it takes a while to kind of like breed it in so that people get it and they understand it. So it's not just coming from me, it's coming from everybody else. We actually did a podcast episode. I'll probably try to link it in the show notes, actually, with the team, where we talked about each of our core values and what they mean and how they resonate. So I've just reminded myself of that. I probably should go back and listen to that episode and see if all of that is still taking place. So
I just also remembered one of my other clients when it's come to their brand values, and one of them was excellence, and part of that was around the innovation that they bring to patients and their journey when it's an eye clinic. So the patients and the journey that they have with this particular brand, so to a point where they actually have also created an app to remind you to take your eye drops. And look, if you've gone for an eye surgery, you're not going to forget to take your eye drops. Do you know what I mean? But they've gone that extra step ahead and sort of thought, no, actually, because excellence is important to us as is, innovative technologies, that's a way that they've integrated it into something that they can provide to their patients.
So recently on social media, I have actually seen you talk quite a bit about brand mindfulness. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? What does that mean? And explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. So a little bit of the story I didn't mention again, so this will give it a bit more context. So whilst I was in Malaysia, and I said, I met these amazing people, mindsets from around the world. So one of them was actually a spiritual mentor. Well, we can call them mentors, or he would call them masters, and they would be like enlightened monks that would come from Tibet and Thailand, and they'd come to my mentor's home, and they'd give talks. So a lot of the time in my 20s and 30s, I was like hanging out with monks, and
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, honestly, now it feels so surreal, like, oh my gosh, I was doing that, and it was just such an amazing journey in that sense, and also just being amongst the conversations, and they were so profound but yet so simple, and you think, oh, that's a given, but yet we don't act on it, or we just put too many sort of thoughts and concepts on situations and circumstances and stuff like that. So, I was very fortunate to have a lot of sort of personal development going on whilst I was in Malaysia as well. So it's something that, since then I have been trying to bring more and more into my life. My mentor would say talk very much about mindfulness, and, it's very much about being aware of every thought, speech, and action. So similarly, in a brand, it's also about being aware of what are you doing intentionally and consciously about your brand, about getting to know who you are as a brand, and then communicating it out to that relevant target audience in a way that's going to help them to improve, impact, change, transform. The whole reason, again, coming back to why you are in business, creating that awareness of being more conscious about how you are actually marketing your brand.
There's something about having that clarity that I think, again, it helps customers, potential, prospects actually understand you more. So it's almost like less is more. Like the more clear you can be through your communications and your offering and what your USPs are, the more likely they are to actually make a purchase or choose to do business with you because they get it.
Yeah, and by having clarity, you have much more concise communication and clear communication.
Yeah, I love it. What a great experience. I think just listening to you, travel does amazing things, doesn't it? In terms of just opening up your kind of mind to new things. I just find it gives me so much perspective. You get out of your, well, especially both of us are based in London, which is obviously a pretty crazy city. You get very caught up in like, all the stuff that needs to go on a day-to-day basis. And actually, sometimes you take a step back and you realize, is all the stuff that I'm doing actually that important? Or could I be making this a little bit easier on myself by being a little bit more mindful and calm and more clear on what I'm trying to communicate? Oh, this has been so good. Are there any final tips or pieces of advice you'd like to share with our listeners before we give them some ways of getting in contact with you? What if you had one kind of message to share with people around what actions they could take with their brand, what would it be?
I would say, it's something, there's a couple of things that I often sort of say, to go outwardly with confidence, go inwardly for clarity. So, do take that time to, if you need to, invest in, and when I say invest, it's not just the money side of it, invest that time and effort to go inwardly, to really get that clarity of why you exist as a brand, because it really is a game changer in that sense. It just gives it so much more meaning. And, part of my purpose is to educate and empower small businesses to be brand led for intentional growth and fulfillment. We're all running businesses. It's no easy task, is it? Running a business, it is a roller coaster of emotions. There's ups and downs. There's all sorts of different things that come to you. But having that kind of purpose and vision and, leading with those values, it just makes it so much more fulfilling. When you do have these other times, then you know that, right, okay, I'm kind of going through this, but I'm gonna get back on track to my purpose and what I actually stand for. And this is one of the things I really observed during the pandemic, and and all of that, was that the businesses that were actually adapting and evolving efficiently and doing it well were the ones that were really driven by their purpose. They were like, right, it doesn't matter, and I'm talking from one-man bands to the bigger size, businesses.
Yeah.
They were just driven by their why, like, doesn't matter. I still want to make sure that people get this from us in some way or another. It may be presented differently, or it's now an online offering, but they were the ones that I noticed that really did make that shift.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And thank you for sharing your purpose, because I think that was a question I definitely should have asked you. So that was really good to hear that. Thank you. And it just made me realize, like, I need to be better at communicating ours. Ours at the moment is, well, I shouldn't say at the moment. This has been our purpose for the last few years, and I've just had to remind myself. It's something I do talk about quite a lot throughout our communications, but officially it is to give visibility to those that think differently. And ours has always sort of revolved around, how do we give people the visibility I think they deserve? We talk all about, those with an entrepreneurial spirit. We want to give them the resources to rise above the noise, stand out from the crowd, and really show their audience who they are. It's a huge passion for us at Brand Active. Yeah. So it's good, isn't it?
Doing that, I love that. That's brilliant.
I've really enjoyed this, Aarti. Thank you so much, because it's always good to kind of just work through some of these. Well, they are really fundamentals. And I know we kind of mentioned at the beginning that it's maybe something that we need to go out and do a little bit of and then revisit. But I've really loved going through all of this and actually hearing a lot more about your journey and how you got to this point. So thank you so much for being with us. I would love you to tell our listeners how they might be able to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty simple. It's Aarti Parmar. So that's AARTI. My surname is Parmar. So that's me on LinkedIn, Aarti.Parmar on Instagram, and aartiparmar.com is my website.
That's fantastic. And I will encourage everybody that's listening to actually go and connect with Aarti. She's actually also launched a Facebook community recently, which I absolutely recommend that you join. Every other month at the moment, Aarti, that you are running a Boost Your Brand challenge online.
Yeah, quarterly at the moment. So
quarterly, yes, which I have participated in the past, and it is brilliant. And for anybody that's looking to push themselves a little bit and maybe break through any of those barriers that are holding them back, I absolutely recommend getting involved in that challenge. I think you've got one happening almost right now, perhaps.
Yeah, so on the 26th of October. So
fantastic.
Yes, come into the Brand Boosting with Aarti group and you'll get all the details there.
I love it. We'll link to that in the show notes. Well, thank you again, Aarti. I really value your time and all the energy that you've put into sharing this information with our listeners. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's been my absolute pleasure, and I'm very grateful that you invited me here. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. It was fantastic to have that conversation with Aarti. She always shares such valuable advice. Here are my top 3 attention grabbers from this episode. Attention grabber number 1. What is a brand? We got into everything that is involved in a brand. And as you heard from our conversation, it definitely is not just your logo and your website. We talked about purpose, values, vision, goals, personality, perception. All of these things are what make up your brand. And I think that was a really important thing to recognize, that you almost need to establish those things first before you even think about the colors, the fonts, the design, the purpose and that personality of your brand, and the impression that you're trying to give, which is actually going to dictate what fonts you decide to use or what colors you decide to use. I thought that was an important message to push through today. Attention grabber number 2, grab every opportunity. I loved how Aarti talked all about that, about just when someone offers something that you just say yes. So she almost accidentally fell into starting this business in Malaysia, which I thought was so fantastic. And it was just a really good reminder that particularly going through times of change, working in a really unpredictable environment like we are throughout 2020, it's important for us just to grab any opportunity that comes our way, because we don't know what sort of amazing things it can actually bring into our lives. So I loved that she talked through that experience and through how she got into starting a business, and something that we can all take on board. Attention grabber number 3, exposing ourselves to personal development. This was really cool, right? Because she talked a lot about how she got involved. Again, it started with her trip out to Malaysia, where she was meeting with these spiritual leaders and monks and really digging a little bit deeper than many of us do on a day-to-day basis. She really invested in her own personal development. And I think you can hear from listening to all of the information that Aarti shared today that has served her well. It has helped give her so much direction in her branding business and what she is able to do for her clients, because she invests so much in herself. So I thought that was a really important point for us to all take on board. Thank you again so much for tuning in. I've really been enjoying some of the comments that are coming through about our recent episodes. And as this is the final episode for season 3, we'll be taking a short little break before we launch season 4 coming up at the end of 2020. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.